Dad, this way. Dakota, you're so fast, I can't catch up. A father and daughter enjoying themselves happily in the park, a typical sight. I believed that this kind of scene would go on forever, and I didn't even suspect it. Until I learned the true identity of my husband from my daughter. I am Serena and I met and married my husband Ron at a marriage activity party. 3 years after our marriage, we had our daughter Dakota and now live together as a family of 3. Having originally worked as a successful salesperson for an advertising agency, I must say that I had good performance. Even after giving birth, I was determined to return to work. For this reason, I decided to return to work when my daughter was 2 years old. Although we were busy working together, my husband was also very supportive and helpful with the housework. Fortunately, my daughter grew up to be a true daddy's girl, who loved my husband. Even when I was at work, if my husband was off, they would go out together to the shopping mall. They were such good friends that they not only went shopping, but also went on trips together. Now that she was in primary school, I was worried that she might start to distance herself from her father. However, such fears were unnecessary. Even in the 4th grade, she often went out with my husband and had secret talks with him that she wouldn't let me hear. Despite anticipating the challenges of adolescence, I couldn't help but feel happy amidst the unchanged demeanor. One day, such a close father-daughter relationship suddenly began to break down. One day my husband came home from a business trip and said, "Dakota, did you miss Daddy? I bought you lots of souvenirs." She didn't make eye contact with him and said, "I didn't miss you at all. I don't need any souvenirs." We couldn't believe our ears at this unexpected reply. Until now, our daughter would have been looking forward to my husband's return and was overjoyed at the souvenirs. My husband was feeling down after being blindsided by our daughter. But I didn't think it was a big deal, thinking that she must have been embarrassed by being so attached to her father in her upper primary school years. But the daughter's rejection of my husband did not stop there. "Don't wash my stuff with your father's laundry. It's disgusting." She suddenly said this. I understand not wanting to share the bath, but to dislike even the laundry. That's unexpected. For the time being, I decided not to tell my husband and secretly did the laundry separately. Furthermore, my daughter's refusal of my husband continued. When I asked her where she wanted to go on a day when my husband and I could go out together, she said, "If your father comes, I won't go." My husband shrugged his shoulders at my daughter's words and went back to his room. I decided to accept that this was part of her rebellious phase and that she was growing up. This situation continued for several years and the daughter became a junior high school student. By this time, she had started to ignore my husband's presence. When my husband said to her, "Good morning, you're up early today," she didn't say a single word back. On the contrary, she doesn't even look at my husband's face. Even though it's adolescence, I felt it wasn't right, so I tried to talk to my daughter several times. But she didn't say anything, just said she didn't like him somehow. Pushing too hard at this point might only provoke more rebellion from my daughter. I thought so, and one night I talked to my husband about my daughter. It might be hurtful to witness that attitude, but since she's going through adolescence, let's cut her some slack. I don't think she means any harm. I was like that too, but eventually, she'll settle down. I told him softly that it was that time of year and that my husband should wait until she calmed down, so as not to hurt him. Who does she think has been raising her all this time? It doesn't seem like the attitude of someone towards their parents. As expected, my husband was angry, as he was not happy with his daughter's attitude of late. I thought he was depressed, but I did not expect him to be angry, and I was a little worried that he would not be able to get closer to my daughter in this way. During the summer holidays, when my daughter was in the second year of secondary school, I was able to take a long holiday. Since my daughter had not been able to travel since she started junior high school, I decided to use the holiday to spend 2 nights with her at a hotel in a rural area. We were excited to be traveling together as 2 women for the first time in a long time. We were excited for our first mother-daughter trip in a long time. On the day of the trip, we went out to eat, picked out souvenirs and headed for the hotel. At this time, my daughter still did not buy any souvenirs for my husband. When she was in primary school, she was the first one to buy a present for my husband. I felt lonely. I couldn't even ask my daughter, "Don't you have to buy your father's?" I couldn't even ask her, so I secretly bought souvenirs on her behalf. When we arrived at the hotel, we enjoyed the spa and dinner and talked a lot about my daughter's school and her lessons. However, it was difficult to find an opportunity to ask her about my husband, and before we knew it, the meal was over. After a meal, we took a moment to relax, then decided to take a shower before bed. There, my daughter suddenly started talking about my husband. "Mom, I know you've been worried because I've been keeping my distance from Dad. I don't want to cause you any worry. But today, I want to tell you the reason for that." Saying that, my daughter opened up with a heavy heart. "I actually saw Dad being friendly with Marjorie's mom when I was in elementary school. At first, I thought it might be PTA or something." With tears in her eyes, my daughter told us what she had seen and heard. Marjorie is a friend of my daughter's from primary school. And what the daughter told me was that my husband was having an affair with this Marjorie's mother. When my daughter first saw them together, she thought they were just returning from a school event. However, as my daughter began to see them more frequently, she began to feel uncomfortable. But my daughter, who was in primary school at the time, felt strange, but she didn't realize it was adultery. Still, my daughter couldn't shake off a sense of aversion towards my husband, hence the distance. There were times in middle school when my husband's behavior became a topic of conversation at school, too. The catalyst was when a student in our class saw my husband and the mother leaving a hotel together. This spread rumors throughout the school. And my daughter understood what had been going on. When my daughter started junior high school, I lifted my shortened working hours and started working full-time. Due to this, there was also less time spent with my daughter, so I had no way of knowing about such rumors. I felt sorry for what I had done to my daughter and full of anger towards my husband. "I'm sorry for making you suffer all this time. From now on, I'll protect Dakota." I hugged my daughter and we both shed tears that day. I wanted to question my husband about the truth of the affair as soon as I got home from the trip. However, there was a lack of evidence for this, so I held my feelings in check and behaved as usual. At this time I had already decided to divorce my husband, but I needed to prepare for this. I consulted a lawyer I knew and was referred to a detective. And then, I had a GPS installed in my husband's commuting bag, and I had his movements monitored further. A month after the detective was commissioned to investigate, I was given a report by the detective, where I was told about my husband's infidelity. The details of the story were beyond my imagination. My husband's relationship with the mother of one of my daughter's classmates had started when my daughter was in the 3rd grade of primary school. Looking back, it was right at the time when I had returned to the sales department and was even busier at work. It was also around this time that I started asking my husband, who could take weekdays off, to attend my daughter's school events and PTA meetings. If I had been aware, I would have noticed. I felt so ashamed of myself. As if to push me further, the detective continued his story. His affair partner was a full-time housewife and had time on her hands during the day, so she used to come over to our house on my husband's days off. Moreover, she even used the kitchen to cook without permission. Since I had the day off today, I made dinner, my husband said, unaware that the dish I happily enjoyed was actually made by that woman. Just thinking about it made me nauseous. Furthermore, most of the housework my husband thought he was helping me with was done by that woman. How did the woman feel doing the housework in our home? Did she despise me as an unfit wife for not doing the housework and working all the time? Did the woman think she was a better wife for my husband? I felt anger like I had never felt before. I couldn't forgive either the woman who brazenly used the kitchen or my husband, who watched her contentedly. And when I heard that the relationship was still going on, it sent chills down my spine. I had never imagined my husband's infidelity. I even worried that my daughter's rebelliousness was getting my husband down. How dare he be angry at my daughter for ignoring him? He was doing the worst thing a father can do. And now she is still suffering because of the rumors at school. I thought no matter what my husband does for me or tries to make up for, I can't forgive him. I wanted to leave the house now, so I decided to rent a flat and live alone with my daughter, but I was also worried about leaving her alone until late in the evening in this situation. Therefore, I told my parents about the situation and asked for their help. They agreed, and agreed to divorce me. They also agreed to rent me a room in a flat they owned near their parents' house. There, my daughter could go home to my parents' house when I was late and my parents could check on her. I wondered if it was really necessary for a second-year middle schooler, but given the circumstances this time, I didn't want to leave my daughter alone as much as possible. In this way, I made good progress in preparing for my divorce. Finally, the day came when I had to tell my husband everything. My husband, who knew nothing about it, came home as usual and waited in the dining room for me to serve him dinner. Instead of a meal, I threw photo after photo at my husband. Photos of my husband and the woman going into a hotel, photos of them going into our house, photos of them going on holiday. The evidence was more than enough for only a month's investigation. I already know everything. How dare you continue to deceive us? In the face of so many photographs, there would be no way to get away with it. I glared at my husband. Yes, no, this is different. We were just discussing school and stuff. I wouldn't do anything to destroy my precious family. Desperately, my husband defended himself, but there was no need to go to a hotel to discuss the matter. And there was no way they would ever go on a trip. The husband's tortured excuses were not going to get through, and he had no choice but to admit it. But my husband still said, "I'm not getting a divorce. My family is the most important thing to me. That woman is just for fun," he cried to me. But I can't forgive him anymore. My daughter is having a hard time at school because of this affair. I also told my husband that my daughter had seen them together and informed me, and that the affair was the reason why my daughter was distancing herself from my husband. Then my husband's attitude changed. He shouted that everything was over and smashed the cup in front of him on the floor. My husband then threw everything in sight around the house. Just when I thought my husband was out of control, a man seized my husband. The man was the husband of the affair partner. I had told the woman's husband about the incident beforehand. And I had told my husband everything today and told him that I was going to give him a divorce and that I wanted him to come. The adulterer was there with him. He made my husband stop, and then he and the adulterer apologized to me. The woman was crying and bowing her head with her husband, but when she raised her head I could see she looked into her husband's eyes for a moment. The way the woman looked at my husband was very unpleasant. "You have done nothing wrong, you are rather a victim. Please raise your head." After telling the woman's husband this, I looked at my husband and the woman and said, "I will never forgive my husband or you for the rest of my life. I don't even want to see your face, so please leave." Despite the frightened faces of my husband and the woman's husband and I agreed only that we would discuss alimony and other matters at a later date. The adulterer then left, being dragged away. My husband then apologized to me repeatedly. He repeatedly told me that he wanted to start over, but my heart was beyond repair. My husband was so persistent that I became afraid and left home with my daughter before the divorce was finalized. I then started a new life with my daughter in a house I had prepared. I asked my lawyer to help me through the divorce proceedings without getting directly involved with my husband. My husband insisted on custody of the child, but the circumstances were such that there was no way it would be granted. In the end, we agreed on alimony and child support payments, and the divorce was finalized. I was deeply relieved to finally be rid of the traitor and celebrated with my daughter that evening. Later, the adulterous woman was also divorced by her husband. And after the divorce was finalized, the adulterer moved into the house where my husband lived. However, rumors of the affair had already spread throughout the neighborhood, making it difficult for them to continue living there. They therefore moved to the neighboring town, but the other woman was a full-time housewife and had little savings. On top of everything, she ended up being sued for damages by both me and her husband. My husband is of course also being charged alimony. My husband's own alimony and child support payments have almost exhausted his savings. Now they live together in a shabby flat and are working desperately to pay the woman and the alimony. The husband was demoted as if to add insult to injury to the couple. Apparently, my husband had been skipping work to have an affair and the story had spread from somewhere. The upper management, upon learning of that fact, felt they couldn't leave it as it was and demoted my husband to a marginal department. They were already struggling to make ends meet, but my husband's salary was cut in half and they were forced to live in even greater hardship. The reality that had visited them after their dreams seemed like hell. Eventually, the woman told my husband that she would get a job where she could earn more money, and then she left him. Self-inflicted is exactly the right word. I don't know where either of them are now, but I hope they are suffering a little. My daughter and I have lived happily together since then. At one point, we thought about changing schools, but the rumors quickly died down. My daughter had a lot of friends who said she did nothing wrong or sheltered my daughter, and she goes to school happily. Despite everything that has happened, my daughter has her original smile back and I can only be relieved. Next week, My daughter and I will be traveling together again. I hope to make many more happy memories with my daughter.